The debate hall in Washington buzzed with anticipation, its high ceilings and polished wood amplifying every whisper. Rows of spectators, from gray-haired diplomats to local churchgoers, leaned forward, sensing a storm brewing. On stage, two podiums faced each other like dueling forts. Jasmine Crockett, the congresswoman with a reputation for cutting words, stood at one, her eyes locked on her opponent. The new pope, draped in white, gripped his podium, his calm face hiding a spark of defiance. The topic was global poverty, but the air crackled with something personal. Crockett wasted no time. She leaned into her microphone, her voice sharp as a blade. The church sits on billions while kids starve in the streets. You talk about charity, but where's the action? Your gold-plated Vatican could feed whole nations. Her words hit, like a slap, and the crowd gasped, some nodding, others clutching their pearls. She wasn't here to play nice, and her glare said she meant every syllable. The Pope's jaw tightened, his knuckles whitening on the podium. He wasn't used to being challenged like this, not in public, not by someone with Crockett's fire. "Congresswoman, your accusations are reckless," he shot back, his voice low but venomous. "The church has built hospitals, schools, shelters. What have you done besides shout from a stage?" The crowd murmured, split between shock and approval. His words were a jab, and Crockett's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a dangerous smile. She stepped closer to her podium, pointing a finger. "Don't lecture me about work. I've fought for people you'll never meet, while you were climbing the church ladder in Peru." "Oh, I know about Peru." The hall went silent, every ear straining. The Pope's face froze, his calm cracking for a split second. Crockett's voice dropped, each word deliberate. "Funny how funds for the poor vanished under your watch. Care to explain that?" The accusation hung heavy, and the audience shifted, whispering. Was this true? Could it be? The Pope's eyes flashed with fury. He leaned forward, his voice rising. "You dare slander me with lies? You're a politician, twisting truth for applause." He gestured to the crowd, who stirred uneasily. "This is no debate. It's a circus, and you're the clown." The insult landed hard, and a few spectators chuckled nervously, but Crockett didn't flinch. She crossed her arms, her stare unrelenting, as if she'd been waiting for this. The moderator, a nervous man in a gray suit, tried to steer back to poverty statistics, but no one cared. The room was a powder keg, and Crockett was lighting the fuse. She tilted her head, her voice now a mocking drawl. "A clown? At least I don't hide behind a holy robe while people suffer. Those Peruvian families deserved better. And you know it." The crowd's whispers grew louder, some shaking their heads, others leaning in, hungry for more. The Pope's face reddened, his composure unraveling. He opened his mouth, but Crockett cut him off. "I've got proof," she said, her voice booming now. "Your darkest secret, the one you thought was buried. I know what you did with that money." The hall erupted in gasps, chairs creaking as people turned to their neighbors. The Pope's hands trembled, his eyes darting to the crowd, then back to Crockett. For the first time he looked cornered, his silence louder than any defense. Crockett smirked, savoring the moment. "Stick around, folks. This is about to get real." The tension was unbearable, the air thick with shock and curiosity. The moderator stammered, trying to call a break, but no one moved. Every eye was on the Pope, waiting for his next move, and on Crockett, who stood tall, ready to strike again. The debate was no longer about poverty, it was a battle, and the first blow had been struck. Shock rippled through the debate hall, the audience frozen in their seats. Jasmine Crockett's words, sharp and accusing, echoed in the silence. Her claim of the Pope's secret like a thunderclap. She stood at her podium, chin high, eyes boring into her opponent. The new Pope, his face a mask of barely contained rage, gripped the edge of his podium as if to anchor himself. The air was heavy, every breath in the room held, waiting for what came next. The Pope broke the silence, his voice cold and cutting. "You think you can smear me with baseless lies and win this crowd?" He gestured to the spectators, some of whom shifted uncomfortably, others leaning forward with wide eyes. "I've served the poor my whole life. You're just a loudmouth, chasing headlines." His words dripped with scorn, and a few in the crowd murmured, torn between loyalty to him and curiosity about Crockett's claims. His attack was personal, meant to wound, and Crockett's eyes flashed with defiance. She laughed, a short, bitter sound that sliced through the tension. "Serve the poor? Like you served those families in Peru when their aid money disappeared?" She stepped to the side of her podium, hands on her hips, her voice rising. "I've got records, Your Holiness, and they don't lie. Unlike some people." The crowd gasped, heads turning as whispers spread like wildfire. The accusation was bold, specific, and Crockett's confidence made it feel real. She was pushing him, daring him to crack. The Pope's face darkened, his calm unraveling further. He pointed at her, his finger trembling with fury. "You're a fraud, Congresswoman. You twist facts to fit your story, just like every crooked politician." His voice boomed, filling the hall, and the audience stirred, some nodding, others shaking their heads. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "If you have proof, show it. Or is this just another one of your cheap tricks?" The challenge was a gauntlet thrown, and the crowd's murmurs grew louder, their anticipation. Electric Crockett didn't back down. She crossed her arms, her smile sharp and fearless. "Oh, I've got proof, and it's airtight. Bank records, witness statements, all pointing to you." She paused, letting the words sink in, her gaze never leaving him. "You thought you could bury it, but I dug it up. And it's ugly." The hall erupted in gasps, people clutching their programs, some whispering prayers, others scribbling notes. The moderator, sweating now, tried to interject, but his voice was drowned out by the crowd's reaction. Fury twisted the Pope's features, his composure a distant memory. He slammed a hand on his podium, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "You're bluffing," he snarled, his voice raw. "You've got nothing but rumors and spite. I've faced worse than you and come out clean." He turned to the audience, his arms outstretched, pleading, "Don't let this woman's lies fool you. She's attacking me to hide her own failures." The crowd was split, some clapping for him, others shouting support for Crockett, the room a cauldron of chaos. The energy in the hall was feverish, every word a spark threatening to ignite. Crockett tilted her head, unfazed by his outburst. "Failures? At least I don't pretend to be a saint while betraying the poor." Her voice was steady, each word a jab. "Those documents are real, and they show exactly who you are." She leaned forward, her eyes glinting with purpose. "Want me to read them out loud? Right here? Right now?" The crowd roared, some cheering, others booing, the noise deafening. The Pope's eyes widened, a flicker of fear breaking through his anger. He straightened, his voice shaking but defiant. "Go ahead, Congresswoman. Show your so-called proof. Let's see if it's as real as your arrogance." His challenge hung in the air, a desperate move to call her bluff, but the crowd was hooked, their eyes darting between the two. Crockett's lips curled into a slow, confident smile, her hand reaching for her briefcase, ready to strike the final blow. Chaos swirled in the debate hall, the crowd's roars a deafening wave. Jasmine Crockett's hand hovered over her briefcase, her eyes locked on the new pope, who stood rigid, his challenge to show her proof still ringing. The spectators, a mix of devout followers and skeptical onlookers, were a tangle of shouts and whispers. Their loyalty split. The air was electric, every second stretched taut, as if the room itself held its breath for what Crockett would do next. She snapped open the briefcase, pulling out a stack of papers with deliberate slowness, her movements commanding attention. "These," she said, holding them high, "are bank records from Peru, 1998, Money meant for starving families, gone. And guess whose name is all over them? Her voice was a whip, cracking through the noise. She slapped the papers on her podium, reading aloud. Transfers to private accounts, signed by you. Over $2 million vanished. The crowd erupted, some gasping, others yelling in disbelief, their faces a mix of horror and fascination. The Pope's eyes burned with rage, his hands clenched into fists. "Lies!" he bellowed, his voice shaking the hall. "Those are forgeries, cooked up by you and your scheming allies." He jabbed a finger at her, his face twisted with contempt. "You're a desperate woman clawing for power by dragging my name through the mud." His words were venom, and some in the audience nodded, clinging to his defense, while others booed, swayed by Crockett's evidence. The divide was stark, the room a battlefield of belief. Crockett didn't flinch, her stare icy and unyielding. "Desperate? I'm not the one sweating under that robe." She flipped through the papers, her voice steady but searing. "Witnesses, too. People who worked with you, saw you move that money. They're ready to talk." The crowd's noise swelled, some shouting for truth, others for the Pope's innocence. An elderly woman in the front row clutched her rosary, tears in her eyes, while a man nearby stood, yelling support for Crockett. The hall was fracturing, and Crockett was driving the wedge. The Pope slammed both hands on his podium, his voice raw with fury. "You're a liar, and these people know it." He turned to the crowd, his arms wide, pleading. "She's attacking your faith, your church, with nothing but fake papers and empty words." His desperation was palpable, his holy image crumbling. Some spectators cheered, but more were silent, their eyes on Crockett's documents, doubt creeping in. The moderator, now a forgotten figure, mopped his brow, unable to control the storm. Pain and anger flashed across Crockett's face, not for herself, but for those she claimed were wronged. She stepped forward, her voice softening but piercing. "This isn't about faith. It's about people, real people who trusted you." She gestured to the crowd, her words heavy with emotion. "Mothers who lost children because that money never reached them. Families still hungry while you built your career. I fight for them, not for headlines." Her voice cracked, and the hall fell quiet, her sincerity hitting hard. Even skeptics in the crowd leaned forward, moved by her passion. The atmosphere shifted, the audience's anger turning toward the Pope. A man in the back shouted, "Shame on you!" and others joined, their voices rising. The Pope's face paled, his hands trembling as he gripped his podium. Crockett pressed her advantage, her voice now a rallying cry. "Justice isn't a robe or a title. It's standing up for the forgotten, and I'll do that until my last breath." The crowd roared, many on their feet, clapping and cheering, their doubts about the Pope growing. She stood tall, papers in hand, a warrior in the spotlight. The Pope's shoulders slumped, his defiance waning under the crowd's turn. He opened his mouth, but no words came, his eyes darting to the exit, then back to Crockett. She met his gaze, unwavering, her evidence a sword at his throat. The hall pulsed with raw energy, every heart pounding, as the truth seemed closer than ever, and Crockett held the room in her hands. The debate hall thrummed with raw emotion, the crowd's cheers for Jasmine Crockett, a tidal wave crashing over the stage. Her words about justice had struck deep, and the new Pope stood at his podium, his face pale, eyes flickering with a mix of fear and fury. The spectators, once divided, now leaned toward Crockett, their shouts of support drowning out, the few still defending him. The air was thick with anticipation, every heart racing as Crockett held her stack of documents, ready to seal her victory. She raised a single sheet, her voice clear and unyielding. "This is a signed letter from your own aide in Peru, admitting you ordered those funds redirected." She held it high, letting the crowd see the scrawled signature. "It matches the bank records. No forgeries here, just truth. The audience roared, some standing, others pointing at the Pope, their voices a chorus of outrage. An older man in the front row shook his fist, his face red with betrayal, while a woman nearby clapped fiercely, tears streaming down her cheeks. The Pope's lips twitched, his hands gripping the podium as if to keep from collapsing. He forced a sneer, his voice hoarse but venomous. "You're a vulture picking at old wounds to feed your ego." He jabbed a finger at her, his words desperate. "You don't care about the poor. You're using them to tear me down." His accusation was a last-ditch swing, and a few spectators murmured but most booed, their faith in him shattered by Crockett's evidence. The hall was hers now, and he was sinking. Crockett's eyes blazed, her response swift and brutal. "Using them? I'm here because no one else would stand up to you." She slammed the letter down, her voice rising with righteous anger. "You betrayed those families, and now you're whining because I caught you. Pathetic." The crowd erupted, their cheers shaking the walls, many on their feet clapping wildly. Her words were a blade, cutting through his defiance, and the Pope's shoulders sagged, his fight fading under the weight of her truth. He opened his mouth, then closed it, his eyes darting to the crowd, then the exit. Finally he spoke, his voice low and bitter. "If mistakes were made, they were not mine alone." It was a half-admission, grudging and evasive, but it was enough. The audience gasped, then roared with disapproval, their boos a storm that chased him. He straightened, his face a mask of wounded pride, and turned to Crockett. "You've won your little game," he spat, "but you'll answer for your arrogance one day." His words were a weak jab, and the crowd's jeers drowned them out. Crockett stepped forward, her presence commanding, her voice steady but fierce. "This isn't a game. It's justice, and it's for every person you let down." She turned to the audience, her eyes shining with purpose. "I fight for the hungry, the forgotten, and I won't stop no matter who's in my way." The hall exploded, the crowd leaping to their feet, their applause a thunderous wave. Men and women, young and old, clapped until their hands ached, some wiping tears, others shouting her name. She stood tall, a beacon of strength, her victory absolute. The Pope's head bowed, his defiance broken. He stepped back from his podium, his white robe no longer a shield. Without another word he turned and walked off the stage, his footsteps heavy, the crowd's boos following him into the shadows. The moderator, forgotten in the chaos, stammered a closing remark, but no one listened. All eyes were on Crockett, who raised a hand, silencing the cheers with a gentle smile. Hope filled the room, a warmth that replaced the earlier anger. Crockett spoke softly now, her voice carrying to every corner. "This isn't about one man. It's about doing right, always. I'll keep fighting for you, for the truth, until the job's done." The crowd rose again, their ovation a promise of support, their faces alight with trust. She nodded, her mission clear, and stepped back, leaving the stage not as a victor, but as a voice for the voiceless, her work far from over.